Inside Story Uganda, real source of political updates.
Yes.
Are you equally uncomfortable being associated with what you believe in?
And I have no issues, so you can profile me the way you like.
I like the word profile.
Well, on my extreme is Mr. Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, a social political analyst. Thank you for joining us and a very good evening.
Good evening, Simon, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's very great. At the beginning of this year, I had you, and probably you took us through your predictions of the year. If I could start with you, how would you summarize 2024?
That's perhaps one of the biggest challenges. When you're looking at a super broad political spectrum, that while introducing this show, you outline quite a number of things. But in summary, I would say, we have witnessed two key moments that perhaps will define this parliament. For me, the first one is the conversation on coffee. I think it's going to define this parliament. We will remember.
Is it parliament alone or politics?
Well, we tend to think about our politics through what normally happens in parliament. But I think coffee is a key definitive issue in the life of this parliamentary cycle. And I hope we'll have a chance to delve into what it means and the fact that UCDA was dissolved, and also the people who fought this fight quickly went to Ntungamo to see what was happening there. And the broader definitive issue for me is the wrangling and almost complete disappearance of political parties in the opposition, which in my assessment I think is good for the country, that every time political parties wrangle, people in the opposition who have organized themselves as political parties, every time they wrangle and disintegrate and fight, the ordinary person realizes that everything is in their hands. They realize that perhaps we overestimated the people that we thought were fighting for us. Or we were so laid back, we thought this wasn't our fight. The political parties tend to work as shock absorbers, right? They tend to, not necessarily as shock absorbers, they tend to work as our frontline fighters. And in the process, people tend to sit back and watch. And I remember very vividly, and I said this when you hosted me at the beginning of this year, that it was in the crisis that befell the leading opposition party then that we had a movement emerge, a people-powered, people-driven movement emerge. It was on the wings of these political parties of that time, from DP to UPC to FDC, that people realized maybe we need to fight on our own. And I think this crisis in these political parties often remind the ordinary person that it's not just the people in the opposition to fight for a good Uganda. The Uganda that works is a Uganda where you are the frontline yourself. And I think that this year has seen still the political parties that won 2021 as the opposition parties, they have disintegrated further. Right, so those two key issues for me, Simon, are very definitive. And also, on a personal note, the election of Isaac Ssemuju as leader of the Uganda Society is a definitive moment for this year as well, because finally we realize that lawyers have been part of the tyranny in this country. When we sit down at the end of the day to write the life cycle of Museveni's tyranny, we will not forget the lawyers, the expenses, the expensive, the convoluted access to justice, the justice system itself. And also, people in Makerere right now, nowadays, are also feeling enchanted to return to the front line, thanks to the election of Isaac Ssemuju as the president of the Law Society.
I'm really surprised that you're not talking about anything to do with citizen activism.
But that's the point I made, that we've seen the disintegration.
You were all praises of the Agathas and the activists who were at the forefront of the anti-corruption?
I mean, I was outlining myself heading into the discussion. I was laying the outline that as parties, as so-called opposition political parties disintegrate, people remember themselves.
Thank you. Captain Babu,
Yes, sir.
what are the key moments that you feel dominated our politics?
Well, first and foremost, we have a country called Uganda, and we have 46 million people. And the 46 million people require people who know how to manage the nation. It's called, what you call politics is what we call political of human management of the people of Uganda. And there have been different ways of approach and beliefs. We have a constitution that is got in this country. We've got a social sector, we've got an economic sector, and eventually we also have the political sector, which you are the one, which you seem to be interested in more than the others. But each one of these affects the other. Now, looking at this year, starting from last year, at the beginning of this year up to now, a lot of things have gone under the water. We've seen a lot of things emerge. We've seen changes within our democracy, things that are changing. And of course, we've got to look at even other people who influence our countries. But I'd like to read this for you before I go on. It's a man called Dr. Chuba Okandibo. He was the chairman of the African Commission for Economics in Addis Ababa. If you are emotionally attached to your tribe, religion, a political leaning to the point that the truth and justice become secondary considerations, your education is useless, your exposure to is useless. If you cannot reason beyond petty sentiments, you are liability to the mankind. The reason I've read that one, we have a lot of people who exaggerate simple things and make them bigger. But there is a small theory in liberalization. When you liberalize politics and you open up, people tend to want to form political parties. In fact, when you talk about political parties, you're talking about those which are active. But if you went in the Electoral Commission, there are a series of political parties that were registered with the Electoral Commission, which have not come out. Now, this has happened whenever you liberalize, there is a tendency for people to go berserk and form parties. And as parties begin to grow, there's a graph. If you draw it nicely, it comes to a point when they call it a shakeout. People tend either to merge, or they tend to close the parties, or they tend to unify with others. And there's a country next door to us which has had this several times. Every time they go into election, party seems to merge.
So you mean the fractures and the storm within parties is a natural trajectory?
It is going to be a natural trajectory because the people who form these, they form them because they don't believe in where they have been. If you look very carefully, a lot of these people have been members of other political parties, and eventually they've gone and formed new parties. And these parties have gone on. Eventually, among themselves, they have also found themselves changing and becoming different parties. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural process. It's going to happen. In fact, if you go back, initially when we had the UPC and Kabaka Yeka joining, this is not the first time they had that happening. Then you had eventually DP. And then we came, and of course we had that military coup, which unfortunately spoiled that process.
So there's no cause to be hysterical about the splinter groups emerging?
No, it's going to continue. This is going to continue. People are going to...
It's part of democracy?
It's going to be part of the democracy. Right now, in the British Parliament, we have 13 parties. Did you know that? We have 13 parties in the British House of Commons. There used to be only 2 parties we knew, remember? There used to be the Conservatives and Labour. Now, they have several parties, including a one-man's party within that parliament. So, as far as I'm concerned, this will continue because the process, people are going to come out. If you don't build your parties on very strong foundation, you're bound to have people separating and finding themselves in other areas. And of course, there are external forces out of those parties that help them to separate also.
Thank you. Honorable Ssemuju, having been one of the key players in politics this year, how would you describe it, and what are the key moments that you can write home about 2024?
In my faith, we don't celebrate end and beginning of a year. for simple reasons. If you are supposed to live 50 years, your life will reduce by the year that you are celebrating, either its end. Two things have happened to me towards the end of the year. The death of my father
Sorry.
Oh, that's very unfortunate.
on
I
13th
commiserate with you.
of December, but also the kidnapping of Dr. Besigye from Nairobi and driven illegally back to Uganda. Dr. Besigye is celebrating both the Christmas and end of year in Luzira for the second time. But we also had 36 of our members kidnapped from Kisumu the same way. They were in prison for 4 months, and later they were granted bail. But they were kidnapped and tortured the same way Tanzanians tortured Ugandans after the fall of Idi Amin. General Kasirye Gwanga told me they piled them in trucks, and I'm using the word piling deliberately, and they are not allowed even to ease themselves the whole duration of the journey from Kampala to wherever they took them to Tanzania. That's what happened to these children who were kidnapped from Kisumu. So that's how the year on my part has ended, with the death, but also the arrest of Dr. Kizza Besigye. Actually not arrest, the kidnapping.
So these two summed up your year.
No, I said that's how the year ended. But in the year, I didn't know, maybe I was naive, that we'll wake up one day when President Museveni has appointed his son as CDF. That happened in March. And it happened against the background of his son breaking the Constitution, breaking the UPDF Act, forming a political party. This guys, you remember, Lieutenant General Henry Tumukunde, that time I was in the media. He nearly formed a political party, Henry Tumukunde, during the debate on the removal of term limit 205. And Tumukunde was arrested and kept in detention for 4 years. One of the crimes he was accused was spreading harmful propaganda. And the propaganda was that Tumukunde had been on 2 radio stations speaking against the removal of term limit and calling President Yoweri Museveni to peacefully retire and hand over power. That was defined as harmful propaganda, and Tumukunde was not very far from here, officers' mess. That's where he was detained for 4 years. But today we have a serving UPDF officer, General, who is even the head of that institution. So the thing that President Museveni will never do many years ago, he now casually and comfortably does those things. I remember I was in Makerere 97, 96, around there, when the Honorable Agura Award complained that Mr. Museveni had irregularly recruited his son into the military. And the president, no, my son is LD, he's not military. That is the story that we are told. Eventually, that son who had been LDU, I don't know how he metamorphosized into the military. And at the rank,
actually attended Sandhurst.
Yeah, but that is the background. When Gaddafi visited here, he's the one who promoted him to the rank of a major. At Kololo, he was attending a ceremony. In the military, I don't know how it is done now, but at that time, every promotion, there was what they used to call GAO, General Administrative Order. For every promotion, they are supposed to record it, give reasons, and file it that Ssemuju Nganda has been promoted from this rank to this rank, and these are the reasons, and it is in the file. This particular promotion of Gaddafi did not have a general administrative order, but it happened, and so on and so forth. So that's where we are as a country, because we've lived it, we've lived with it. Even you in the media, you no longer take it as a serious matter, that you can have a president who can appoint his son as CDF to head the military. Of course, already he had appointed his wife as a Minister for Education, but since you're talking about the year 2024, the appointment of
So
Muhoozi.
you want to suggest that the appointment of Muhoozi was a strategic, rather a significant moment?
It is. That a sitting president can ask his son to head the military. A son whose background in the military I have given you, that at that time the president was a bit shy. Even when the matter of his son being in the army was raised, he didn't find it okay. And at that time he said, no, my son is not in the military, actually he's LDU. Because there were almost no qualification to join LDU. But to be recruited in the army, there are processes. First, they must announce that they are recruited, because that's what the Constitution says.
Can we? Okay, I understand.
So I know you are uncomfortable, like all of you are in the media, when you begin speaking about the Museveni family, but you're not talking about a CDF. So you want me to stop discussing the CDF?
No, not really, not really.
Yeah, I see you now, you're trying to...
No.
You asked me about the year, and I am telling you in March this year, one of the most significant things, and historically one of the most significant things that has happened in the management of Uganda, is that a sitting president appointed and handed the military to his son. The things that the son has done should concern you if the appointment didn't. That he can attack one country after another, and then he can threaten other senior officers and said, I will arrest you, you are hiding under my father. Because they look at this thing now as theirs at home. So the rest of you are just serving the family. Because a CDF, and you are telling the immediate deputy CDF, Erweru, that you a buffoon, not just a buffoon, but I'm going to arrest you, you are hiding under my father. These things are significant. They define which sort of country we are living in. And the father is there continuing to babysit his son. He abuses Kenya, he calls Kenya to apologize. He has now abused Khartoum, the father has kept quiet. The other day he was abusing Ethiopia. I think they nearly chased our diplomats from Ethiopia. So if there is anything that has, for me, has defined the year, is Museveni cementing family role. That you guys, we are in charge, Uganda is our enterprise, we will rule it the way we want, and I will do so with my family. So my son, you can help me with the military. My wife, you can help me with education. My brother, wealth creation. My in-law, export. What? So that's where we are. That's where we are as a country, and for me, that has defined the year that now all the pretense has gone away in the year 2024.
Well, Dr. Ssemuju, you chose to look more at Parliament. How best can the country make sense of everything that transpired, from the way citizens wanted to run on Parliament, and then the exposure, the entire spotlight on Parliament, and how Parliament has conducted business?
I mean, my spotlight in Parliament, I made to underscore the fact that at every moment in our politics, the wananchi has to realize that the crisis we have will require all our concerted efforts to refocus and push a reset of the country. And what the politics Parliament has showed us is that you need to get away from Parliament, take Parliament to the street of the city, take Parliament to the capitals of this country, and then the citizens have to take these things back in their hands. So if you look at the major parties in the country, which is NUP, it has been this year that NUP disintegrated at Museveni's money, right? So through the Speaker of Parliament, allegedly, there was money which was shared, given to Matthias Impuga, who was then leader of the opposition. And we saw NUP now in some sort of disarray. And around the same time, the FDC, which has been the leading political party in the opposition for quite some time, also money acquired in 2021, they haven't yet survived this sort of scandal. We see a new political formation emerging, right? I tend to see these not as new beginnings. I see these as reminders to the Wananchi that you need to remember the people that you see fronting at what you call the front line. The people that you see at the front line are not really at the front line. They are entangled in thousands of scandals and problems, and they're constantly trying to refocus and reimagine themselves. It is up to you to wake up and do this thing on their own. And the silver lining in this entire thing, Simon, is that even the scandal that continues to rock the NUP, for example, was started by a citizen journalist, somebody who took to social media and made this grand exposure, right? So it is in this moment that we've seen Agatha, Agora, Spice, and Tongo emerge as the new movers of opposition politics. And one of the fascinating things that you will see in our parliament nowadays is that what gets onto the floor often starts on the streets of social media. That people on the streets start to raise these things and then become issues that are debatable on the floor of parliament, right? Which is, again, a constant reminder that the Wananchi have to take the thing in their hands and then fight. So this is why I think Parliament is spotlighting in this case, that when you see people gearing up again, preparing them for the next election, which is 2025 is going to be the year of the election, the Wananchi need to have this reminder.
Is there a sense that maybe the public went for a soft target, spared State House and went for Parliament?
And I think you need to, I'm not sure I understand the question, because you see, when you're fighting, this war has so many fronts, and every front requires fighters targeting it, right? You know, what Ssemuju, quite elaborately spelled out, the crisis we have in State House is that right now we have a CDF who doubles as a comic and is cracking bad jokes on social media, and these jokes have entangled our foreign policy in different ways, right? So that we have a crisis there at a very top level, that you have the CDF, a general, attacking another general. One time you have a CDF attacking a son-in-law of the president. You see, so we have that front line. You could say that front line has largely been ignored by the Wananchi, the everyday strugglers, but that we are closely watching, and you can see the struggle playing out. So the other space of struggle is what happens in Parliament, where people come to us every single year and promise that we're all your frontline commanders. So the spotlight has been on them. But Simon, you need to understand also that
to do is to sit down and say, wait a minute, what has gone wrong? Why are they so frightened? Who has frightened them? The people who have frightened them are there in that Parliament. Their job is to frighten everybody in Parliament, not even to talk. 557 people, they can only get 2 minutes to speak when they stand up. So the first question...
Babu, I want us to look at the opposition in general.
I'm coming.
Has it really lived up to the billing of the opposition that calls government to account?
Within reason, there are people who are in the minority who have done a fantastic job. In fact, one of them is sitting right here. We don't have to go very far. He stands up and he speaks. And the others who have stood up and spoken. And that's why we sent them there. And they say, we don't agree with this, or we agree with this, or we should do it this way. Now, when I send you to Parliament, I don't send you to go there and fight. I send you to go and give views on a particular incident. For example, I've heard him speak several times on certain issues, and he has spoken about the budget. He has spoken about the election of some people, and I heard some people were bringing new, what do you call, members' bills, which were not good. He stood up and he spoke about it. Now, we've got members of Parliament who stand up and actually talk on both sides, who are good. For example, on this side, there is another gentleman, I think it's from Busoga. They stand up and speak, and you hear them speaking very well. So to me, I cannot run away, run down our parliament. They've had a few incidents here and there. Those happened because of...
So are you only limiting them to parliament? I want us to look
No, I was
the
going to...
opposition generally.
No, your question...
Inside and outside parliament.
You're asking me about parliament.
No, I was asking about the opposition in general.
In general, outside?
Have they lived up to the billing?
Now if we go to parties, political parties, and I'm not going to go to this and that one, it's even starting with the one in the government, they're in disarray. All parties have got problems. And disarray has been brought about by certain forces. Forces that are within those parties and forces external to those parties. And there are people who are there and causing problems with all our parties. Our parties have not had enough time to settle so that they can build parties and they can build this nation. Because those parties, they are supposed to build this nation, hand in hand. By the way, when they are outside parliament, they should work together. Have you seen the people in Britain? Have you seen people in America? They work together on issues which are important to the country. And if they are not happy with what one group has brought, they stand up and give the other side of the coin.
Thank you.
And this is what we want them to do. Now, what you're asking about, these little differences that they keep on exaggerating and making them look very big. I don't know, they are merging. I don't know this one too. Those are half of them. In fact, the media has helped to exaggerate some of them. There are simple things that they could find answer to. Now, the one I find very big is where an external force comes in a party and try to destroy it. Now, that is big. But if there are simple things that people want to merge, that people want to join the other party, these are natural. They are going to happen.
Yusuf, on the scale of 1 to 10, you would say, out of 10, 8% of political opposition especially, have had rifts and a lot of bickering in 2024. How do you analyze whatever has been happening, from the Mpuga scandal to the FDC, new formation, and all that has been happening?
No, these rifts are natural to these groups. They, when we entered multi-party politics in 2005, and one of the lies of our times, one of the beautiful lies of our time, is that we have multi-party politics in this country, and we have political parties in government and political parties in the opposition. That's one of the beautiful lies that we've convinced ourselves and repeat every single day. We don't have political parties in this country. We don't. We have special purpose vehicles, as they've been called. But there's something special about modern autocracies, is that the idea of political parties is a technique through which the autocrat keeps a veneer of democracy. And we have fallen for the thing, hook, line, and sinker. We have fallen for the thing that even our best, I love this man so much. This man, I was at university and used to come and inspire us as young people. And for all his brilliancy, Ssemuju Nganda is not at the table where key decisions affecting this country are taken. The best brains in this country are branded opposition, and they never come anywhere close to that table where meetings with, say, foreign investors are discussed. They're never there. The best brains in law, in business, in politics, once they are branded opposition, they never come anywhere close. So we continue to come back to this lie, and we say opposition political parties.
Okay, as we speak, the leading opposition party has had a fair share of contradictions and conflicts within.
No, Simon, I said the conflicts are part of this system. These units are supposed to disappear at the end of every political cycle. They're supposed to actually disappear. That's why they are even named platforms, movements, what was the forums, Forum for Democratic Change, National Unity Platform. Even the nomenclature underscores where they're supposed to be, that after this particular political project, they're supposed to disappear. The thing called National Unity Platform was supposed to die after the 2021 election.
Seriously?
It was supposed to die so that it could be reborn into something else. Because right now we have a different struggle. So the struggle of our times have to the group has to be in sync with the struggle of the time. You see, so if you sustain an old group for a new moment, you're losing it. Because you see right now, Simon, I've said to this show many times, a conversation which I think we have failed to, get running, that we're still a colonized country, right? We're still a colonized country, that everything that, would speak to the ordinary Ugandan is not in our hands. Taxes. I asked you on this show one time that who is that economist that who decides and justifies a particular type of taxation? Who is that economist, Minister of Finance, wherever they are, who sit down and say, this is the tax regime, new businesses, even businesses which haven't just borrowed money from a bank, are paying tax? Who are those economists deciding on our behalf? I've spoken plenty of times about the interest rate.
You want to suggest that the opposition is simply playing?
No, you see, there was an article that was written by Kalundi Serumaga where he said Parliament was the bribe. That the colonial model, which we're still living under, the colonial model was that when you saw the best among the group, you invited them into the Legiko. The best from the group, those who had led the Bataka movement, were invited into the Legiko. Seats were opened so that they could be given a soft life, overwhelmed with money, and at the end of the day, they forget about the rest of their wretched. So we are in that process that the best from amongst us enter Parliament. It's not the money that is given dished to them inside Parliament, but the institution itself. Because you see, there's so many wonderful people. My panelist here, Honorable Ssemuju Nganda, there's a story which happened in the, the story of Twaha Kagabo, the man who doesn't know what he is now. That man is a symbol of the predicament of our good people. This man goes to Parliament with a good heart, knowing he's going to work for his people. But as soon as he got there, he got money and he wanted to return it. Now, when he tried to return the money, he realizes, now this is not how this thing works. This thing works as long as you're here. You have to be part of the eating group. So when you keep asking me, how should I rate our opposition politicians? The best from amongst us, the Wananchi, have been sucked into the thing called Parliament, and they have been bribed.
Okay, what's been their general performance? What has stood out in their performance?
Simon, you need to ask the key indicators of our lives. On what yardstick do you measure their performance? Is it on coffee? Usually it was dissolved, even when the best, from the farmers to the best brains who started UCDA to the chairman of Ssemuju Growers Cooperative, all of them said this thing should stay. Museveni dissolved it. So against what yardstick? You remember we had the current leader of opposition overworked himself when he was grilling, when he was leader of Kosase, grilling the leader of Uganda Airlines. You remember that story? He dominated media for, I think, about 3 weeks or 4. But the same person who was exposed as incompetent is still the CEO of Uganda Air. So against what yardstick are you going to measure their performance? Taxation, banking, mobile money, civil aviation, public health. Against what yardstick are going to say they have performed to this much? You see, one of the pains was when I saw a picture of the current leader of opposition going to endorse the construction of the coffee plant in Ntungamo. After all the anger and the energy and the debate and the havoc in Parliament, it's been quickly forgotten. So against what yardstick are you going to measure their performance? But I'm going to take you what I said at the very beginning. You have to look at the bribe as the institution itself. That the people, our best from amongst us, once they get sucked into this space, they're gone.
Well, Honorable Ssemuju, what's been remarkable about opposition politics in 2024?
First of all, the political parties generally are supposed to be public institutions. That's why Parliament, through the Political Parties and Organizations Act, said we will fund some of the activities of the political parties. We are now spending 35 billion shilling on political parties. The point the Honorable Babu was making, he was actually uncomfortable that you want to continue profiling this opposition, this. These are meant to be public institutions that one institution will be in charge of the country today and then another one will be tomorrow, like you've seen it happen in Ghana. the ruling party losing an election, conceding, and then says, let's go and rebuild. That was the idea, that you return these parties, build them into public institutions, because they are supposed to bring a value to the way the country is run. Unfortunately, politics in Uganda, this morning I was being interviewed by a journalist, and I said, you see, the biggest trouble is that many of us who go in parliament go there because we've seen there is a big salary. Many of us. Not because we've seen there is some good work to benefit the country, and I think I take their value to enhance it. But I make a decision that I must join the parliament because there is a big salary, sell my house, if I have a business, mortgage it, find some money, go and bribe my way to parliament. So the political parties are working, facing almost the same environment like what should be the ruling party is facing. I have told you earlier that if someone can't allow his own party to operate as a party, will that person allow other parties that are not his even space to breathe? Because look, this year, like he traditionally does, President Museveni has started the campaign. You remember in the last election, 2020, 2021, he came to Parliament and asked a supplementary of 43 billion that he wants to go around the country for something, wealth creation. And then he went around the country. After that, he was like COVID came in and said no campaigns. But he had campaigned. Today, by all intent and purpose, you see President Museveni campaigning, giving money to prostitutes in Mbale, in Teso, where. So is
6 workers, please.
I want to quote the word I saw in the media. There is a lawyer who made it even very interesting. He said in the penal code, prostitution is a crime. So if people who are committing a crime form themselves into a circle, the work of the president should be to arrest them. But he was endorsing them by giving them money. So the president is campaigning. The Honorable Kyagulanyi said we will go and, was it opening a branch and something. Then they said, no, there was an accident on Masaka Road when you are going there. Now your police will no longer allow you to continue doing the same thing that Museveni is doing. Because this latest campaign by the president, he met the NRM MPs and he said, you guys, it is time to go to the people. Those are the very words that he used and the MPs told us. And he said, I will begin with Bokedi. Then he went there. Of course, when you have a president who lies and he praises himself, because you can't fool people that the president is on operation wealth creation. So you go to district by district. So what is it that the president is doing there, apart from giving money to prostitutes, that remain? Just tell me that he was in Teso, now this one has been resolved. Now he's here, this has been resolved. But he's campaigning. And after this round of campaign, I suspect this year that we are about to enter, if the Almighty gives us life, he will find a reason to stop any other political party. So I want you to judge the point you ask. I want you to judge the opposition, the political parties in the opposition, against the background and environment.
In the midst of the hardship.
Yes, and I'm coming to that.
You feel the opposition.
And under which they are doing politics, that they are curtailed.
Okay.
I have told you Dr. Besije, who is our de facto leader in PFF, is in Ruzera. They kidnapped him from Nairobi, where he had gone to attend a book launch.
Yeah, but do you think the opposition has defied the odds, or they are comfortable?
The opposition political parties, the institutions that are supposed to be doing the things the Honorable Babu spoke about earlier, they have also been undermined the same way other institutions have been undermined. In the end, we may end up where other countries have ended up. And I've said this with a lot of pain. You may have a group that coming into power that has no idea of how a country is run and managed. because politics, as he said, is management of society. If you look at the rest of the parties, just tell me one party that this one, if they go into government, we are very sure on their own that they will manage the society called Uganda very well. Look at the people who are in these parties themselves. So therefore, at a parliamentary level, we've done the work that is supposed to be there. They will bring a budget, you study and make a response. It ends there. Outside, you will not be allowed to go and do the things that political parties do. The other day, I saw police raiding Kamocha, where Nopo has a school. And they said, no, you can't continue running this school. The military attires inside it. So the simple thing that you are supposed to be doing, you will be stopped from doing them. And I don't want to use that as an excuse to say that there are no weaknesses within our own institutions. You've seen what has happened to FDC. It's the same thing that happened to DP. It's the same thing that happened, because all of us are also selfish in a way, that we are not in these political parties to grow them, but we are in these political parties as a vehicle for you to go in parliament and begin earning a salary. So the contribution you are making, I have kept comparing ourselves to the MPs in the 6th parliament and 7th. People who risked their own career for the sake of the country, and those of us who are not even risking simple things. If you see the way leaders behave, including within the opposition, you will shudder. So there is a difference. People who
How do they behave?
People who are in government, people appointed by M7, and those of us who are seeking to take over from them. Something fundamental needs to happen. Otherwise, people who mean well, people who have knowledge and experience.
Now, with clarity, how do they behave?
I want to stop it at that. Otherwise, now I'll be picking persons, and I'll be in trouble with my colleagues. I remember recently.
I've not known you to be a coward.
No, I'm not a coward, but sometimes I also have to be rational.
Yes.
Because you can't be pricking people all the time. Then you'll have nobody to work with. So that's why I want to keep it general.
You are disturbed by the way your colleagues are running the show.
But
I have
Nganda
said
is saying he has nobody to work with because all of them are selfish and dirty.
No, I have said we, because I don't want to exclude myself. When you compare MPs, for example, who are in the 6th and 7th parliament, with the current crop of MPs that you have, you thank God that the country hasn't collapsed. If you compare those who are running political parties when you are looking from outside and those who are running political parties today, big difference. You eventually, and I remember one time, I don't want to go to that example, it annoyed many people, you may end up, so the alternative now, begin evaluating the alternative, that if Museveni and his group now left power, and this particular group gets into power, are they capable of running the country? Keep asking those questions as you judge people. Before you judge their performance, were they the right person?
But even when Museveni came, he was incapable.
No. Museveni wasn't incapable.
Honorable Babu.
You're talking about Museveni, who was in UNRF, who had been in government. At that time, he was one of the key people running the country. He had been Minister of Defense.
But see where we are, Ssemuju. If you say he was capable, see where we are.
We are not there because Museveni lacks the intelligence. The only reason we are where we are is because Museveni is selfish. He thinks only about himself.
Thank you very much.
But it's not that Museveni lacks the quality to run the country.
Captain
He
Babu,
simply mismanages it deliberately.
Captain Babu, when I asked Honorable Ssemuju about the state of the nation, he said it's chaotic.
Yes, that's a good word.
Do you share the same sentiment?
Politically and economically too, and socially. We've gone into a completely different level. Now, we're talking about a lot of things here, but there's reasons why these things are happening. And Ssemuju has been good enough to say there are certain people who are selfish. Now, we've got to start from there. Now, what did we do when we went to the Constitution? Everybody said, oh, now we want a presidential system so that we can elect our president, all of us, and we have a man. That man was given a lot of power. Then, if we had gone a presidential system, the legislative arm would also have been different. But what we did, we went presidential on the election of the president, and we went parliamentary on the election of parliament. They are two different systems. Parliamentary in the sense that you let political parties there, and then you create in the constitution the things called opposition. In the presidential system, you have majority and minority. Are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Because these are alternative, as you put it, they are alternative, that one day this might be in charge of the country, and the other day. So you get your best leaders from both sides. Now, in America, they only have very few parties. But in Britain, they are now increasing. In fact, apart from the Labour, which is in government, all the other parties have gone on the opposition. If you had to combine all the parties in the opposition in England, they would be on the government side. But they didn't follow that. They went for the majority party that became the leadership. Now, that alone created a problem. There's a very big problem between the executive, where you have a lot of power, and the parliamentary system, which also has power. So there's pull and push. And therefore the executive says, how do I manage this very tough parliament? You have been describing all sorts of methods which have been used to do that. To weaken certain people, to use certain facilities, to make them do what you want them to do. Now, that right away is the beginning. Now, to remove all these things, you know what we need to do? In fact, I think my friend said it. The parties are having problems. The democracy we're supposed to have is having problems. We must go back to the drawing board. How do we build our country? Now, this is what I want us to talk about.
So this year has revealed the need to get back on the drawing board.
Yes. In fact, I'm one of those who want us to review the Constitution. I want us also not only to review the Constitution, to even review the size of administrative expenses and so on and so forth. Now, to do that, we need to sit down. How do we build our country? And I think all of you, instead of wasting your time about the small things that people are talking about, how do we build this country? First of all, Uganda was not made by Ugandans. It was made by the British when they were sitting in a place called Berlin. They made a country called Uganda. They put nations in a country called Uganda. These nations in Uganda have never been united until today. When the British came here with a very small group of people, they used something called divide and rule. Our few Africans who went to study them, they were so brainwashed, they started to divide and rule. And until today, we are dividing and ruling. We are using tribalism. We are using religion. So until we sit down and say, how do we build our country? And the only way to build that country is stop this branding we are talking about. There's no branding. We are all Ugandans. How do we build this country? I like to use the word the Katikiro used, tafari ku tafari. How do we build this country, brick by brick, starting from the foundation? First of all, we have to unite this country. This country is not united.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's look at the big scandals that have defined 2024. Yusuf, which scandal stood out for you? We had the 500 Service Award saga. We had Chitezi, which also turned scandalous from a disaster to a scandal, and several others.
But before you go very far, that thing you people keep on calling scandal is Parliament that is scandalous, not those people.
Well,
I want us to be very clear about this, because those people...
you've been around. I can't enumerate all the scandals that have happened in 2024. But which one stood out for you?
Saibo, there's a thing that Honorable Ssemuju started at the beginning of this show, which should feature prominently as a scandal. And because it's not only rooted in our present, because it has prospects for the future. And that's, you remember the year before 2024, we had the president's son made a general, reached the level of a general. And the year before that, and then later, he was made CDF, commander of the UPDF. And I want to paint a scenario. You know, I want to paint a scenario that, God forbid, that we wake up one morning and Museveni is not able to run this country anymore. The ways in which the current command of the Defense Forces has been, you know, managing himself, managing his social media, managing himself. We wake up one morning and we don't have life in the sitting president. How does this country move forward? Because you see, one of the most bothersome thing for me is that our president is 80, and many of his contemporaries, the people,
Officially, because he says he doesn't know when he was born.
is officially 80.
No, the church told him.
In fact, he said one of the daughters assigned him a date.
The
So
date.
the one he celebrates was
Was assigned by his daughter.
that he has said.
So,
That one of the daughters picked a date and he said, sir, you were born on this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he says
So
he
he-
doesn't
From a basket.
he doesn't know. He doesn't know when he was born.
So
Like a
Simon-
ruffle.
Simon,
It was a ruffle.
Simon, God forbid we wake up one morning and our elderly president,
No, I want to understand, because in my faith, death is normal. So why should God forbid the death of Museveni if he doesn't forbid death of other people?
I don't want to sound like sound like I'm looking forward to it. So in the Islamic
Yeah,
faith,
but,
it's also not fair to look forward to somebody's death.
No, but you can't say.
So
God
you are
forbid.
fixed
To
the
die
God
is-
forbid.
No,
is
it's
normal.
me.
For being politically correct?
I don't want to appear like I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, Simon, I've written in my column in The Observer that I wouldn't, in the circumstances we're in, I wouldn't wish Museveni sudden death. Because there's a time in the life of a country that an autocrat kills all the other institutions, that it remains the single institution. That sudden demise is as dangerous as you can imagine it. That so now that all are,
Munt called it a center of stability.
so all institutions are dead, and the only institution standing is Yoweri Museveni. So I wouldn't wish him sudden death. I would want that this country perhaps is prepared in a different way. But I want to return to the point I was trying to say, that God forbid, I'll say that one more time, God forbid, we woke up and there was no life in Yoweri Museveni. How do we paint the scenarios moving forward? We have a commander of the Defense Forces who has said he's going to be the next president after him. But our constitution says the deputy president becomes president.
The vice.
The vice president becomes president. But we have the commander of the Defense Forces, on not one occasion, he has said he's going to become president after his father. Now, for me, in my list of scandals, that ranks really highly. And he says, he doesn't say, I'm going to stand against my father. He says, after my father, which means after my father passes. Now, this for me would stand way above any other scandal we're talking about, because as we move into 2025, the man will be officially 81. This year, I lost my dad, he was 80. The difference between my father and Yoweri Museveni is that my father prepared himself for his death. He often spoke about a time, he said, I think I'm old now, I don't want to disturb people, I need to go. He often said things like that. He said them joking, but he said things like that. Although the other joke was he said, I'm as old as Museveni, but unlike him, I don't want to continue disturbing people because I think I'm past my time. But the people in their 80s, if you look at Uganda's lifespan, the people in their 80s are living on borrowed time. Now, running a country is extremely stressful. And you see, there's no
Is the
likelihood.
conversation about presidents
No,
necessary?
Simon, we're talking about scandal.
You know,
There's no
something that
likelihood.
was in the
I told you there are
constitution.
issues I don't want to waste my time on. But let him go ahead.
Simon, he actually made me lose my point when you said it is necessary, but I think it's 100% necessary.
Trump is not going to be very
No,
happy with
it is necessary because
Trump will not be
in
happy with
the case of Uganda, it was even a constitutional matter, the age.
Yes.
Okay, please
So
make your point.
I'm trying to paint a scenario that we are with a man who is, as per our life expectancy, is living on borrowed time.
But I asked you about scandals and you're
I've showed you how this scandalous this could
Where
be.
do you get this word borrowed time? Everybody's got a lifespan. So what do you call
No,
it
but
borrowed time?
there's a thing called life expectancy. So when you've gone past this debt,
Those are theories.
Both in the Bible and the Quran. Dr. Besigye, for example, told us that in the Bible,
70
our
years.
time is 60
70.
and 70. And he said in 2 years' time, I'll be 70. And I think I am giving you only 2 more years.
Simon, I'm becoming suspicious why Honorable Babu is stopping from discussing.
No, I've not told you.
You're constantly interjecting and making me lose my point. What is your interest in this matter?
Just say when you use the word borrowed time, I don't know where it comes from.
Look,
Everybody has got a lifespan. It can't be a borrowed time.
there's life expectancy, there's religious edicts on somebody's life, there's even Yoweri Museveni himself said, I think after 70 you've lost all energy, you can't
He
continue.
actually said the last time he met traders in Kololo, he said he's about to go to heaven.
To meet his creator.
Yeah, and he said, you see, you have the future on your hands.
Fine.
Me, I
Fine,
am done.
please conclude.
So the scandal of scandals is that many of his contemporaries around the same age, including my father, have passed. And as he also himself, by his own admission, stares at death, we don't have this conversation on who is going to take over this country after him. Because you see, nobody's going to beat himself in an election which he organizes. No, nobody's going to beat himself in an election. As long as he stands, he'll not be beaten once he organizes the thing. We have evidence for that even when he loses, he actually is declared winner of that election. And nobody's going to go to war. This is why I'm even bothered as to why. It bothers me, the people around somehow they're thinking, that they now think Kizza Besigye is the enemy. That he's in Kenya trying to plot to get weapons to overthrow this man.
No, 2 pistols.
The era of Bush wars ended a long time ago. There's nobody who's going to go to war to beat himself out of power. And nobody's going to beat him in an election which he organizes. We need to have a conversation. And I don't mean, when I say having a conversation, I don't mean people like myself or Ssemuju